The Premier League is one of the most high-end divisions in world football, but it's not been that competitive in recent years, with Manchester City winning something like 5 of the last 6 titles. However, that looks like it might not necessarily happen this year because Pep's side are stumbling a little bit. Find out more about who the competitors are, their strengths, their weaknesses, and ultimately who I think is going to win the title in this video. But before I get into it, just a quick plea. If you're considering it and like the videos, make sure you're watching as many as you can. I'm very, very close to getting the channel some ad revenue at the moment, and that means I can do a bit more of this and make things more consistently for you. I'd hugely appreciate the ability to do that. Thanks. First off, the first club that is potentially going to push for the title is Manchester City. Now, Manchester City are obviously the first side in contention. Pep Guardiola's side have been at the top of English football for a long time. Won the, was it treble or quadruple last year? I think it was the treble last season. And they don't look like they're going to slow down. They've still got a very high-end squad. They've still got that tactical philosophy behind them. And yeah, they've got plenty of strengths. The first thing is their squad. The average Manchester City squad player is going to cost something like £40 million, and you can see by the fact that Calvin Phillips, that cost 40-odd million quid, isn't even making this, like, first 11 at the moment when Rodri isn't available. Now, I don't know if that's an issue with Phillips. I don't know if that's an issue with Pep not fitting Phillips into the system, but it's a sign that all of Manchester City's players are the highest quality, and there is absolutely no question about whether or not they have the best side in the league. They just do. Although they might not have spent as much as Chelsea or Manchester United, they've spent it intelligently, and that means they've got the best squad around. In addition to that, they also have an obvious tactical identity that the squad fits into. When you go into a Pep Guardiola game, you know what you're going to face. You're going to face a lot of passing, you're going to face a lot of pressure, you're going to face that weird 3-2-5 system that seems to be really effective. And your job is basically counter this system or you lose, because he's not going to change. What's going to happen is it's going to be consistently that very same tactical identity, but better if things are going wrong. It's a bit Bielsa-y, like Pep learned a lot from Marcelo Bielsa, and the main thing he learned, in my opinion, was that if you've got a good enough plan and you stick to it, eventually things will come through. Furthermore, this side is very experienced in title fights. They won the Champions League last season. They won the FA Cup last season. They've won the league something like 5 out of the last 6 times. This side has experience of winning trophies and know what it takes to secure those titles. And that could be an issue for some of the sides that are coming up later. First of all, we've got to discuss the weaknesses that Manchester City have. And the first is that they're a little bit too reliant on Rodri, in my opinion. Rodri has been out for 2 matches after grabbing a Nottingham Forest player by the throat. In those 2 matches, they have lost, which is not ideal for Pep Guardiola's side. Next time they lose Rodri, the same thing could be happening again, especially considering that they've played against Arsenal and, was it Wolves they lost to last time round? I can't quite remember. But losing control of the midfield is a big threat for Pep Guardiola, because that's where transitional football happens. His entire style is to stop transitional football, and if he loses Rodri, he loses that ability, and things get a lot worse for Manchester City. In addition to that, the reason they lost Rodri was poor discipline. Rodri grabbing someone by the throat isn't something that should be happening ever. Mateo Kovacic making 2 challenges in yesterday's match that could have both potentially been red cards isn't ideal. Kyle Walker snapping at the Liverpool set-piece coach isn't good. And it's all a sign that there's a little bit of a lack of discipline in the Manchester City side at the moment. I feel like if other sides are able to put enough pressure on them, Manchester City could start to crumble and struggle and eventually find themselves potentially out of the title race, with one of their main competitors being Arsenal. Arsenal did their best last season. They got to a couple of months away from winning the title, but eventually things all fell apart under Mikel Arteta. They're giving it another go this season, which is fair enough. They've added to their squad. They've got Declan Rice in there. They've got Jurriën Timber in there. They've added Kai Havertz. And they've got plenty of strengths in their side, including a very, very strong defence. They only allowed 1 shot on target from Manchester City in yesterday's match, which is incredible, because Manchester City are one of the most forward-thinking attacking sides that you could possibly deal with. I've accidentally moved my mic. Sorry about that. They allowed 4 shots in total, which shows that they're really good at restricting sides when they desperately, desperately need to. And in addition to that, they've got plenty of attacking options. A lot of their attacks and victories don't necessarily come from winning matches early on. A lot of it is making the right substitutions, bringing on, for example, Leandro Trossard or Gabriel Martinelli and being able to say, look, we've got strength from the bench. Can you match it when you make your changes? And that sheer depth in attacking options means that the side is able to both consistently rotate between Champions League and Premier League and change within a match. So they're able to really force mistakes from their opponent and eventually grab a winner like they did against Manchester City. Might have been a bit lucky, might have been a deflection, but a winner is a winner. It's 3 points against Manchester City. And in addition to that, they're also impressive in transition. They've got very fast players, Saka one wing, Martinelli on another. Odegaard is fantastic at finding the perfect pass in any situation for the side. And that's something that a lot of teams in the Premier League will not be prepared to deal with, which is a significant issue for Manchester City because Man City tend to have that one way of attacking. Arsenal have multiple now. They can take control of a game or they can play on the counter. In terms of weaknesses, Arsenal have a relative lack of depth in comparison to Manchester City, which is going to be a real issue for them when it comes to being later in the year if there's a few injuries and they're losing key players in key positions, which is a big problem when it comes to the African Cup of Nations and Asia Cup. Tomiyasu, for example, going to the Asia Cup is going to remove a little bit of their depth at left back and right back and potentially centre back. Losing Thomas Partey is going to be another big issue because they've lost a key midfielder to rotate with Declan Rice. The fact of the matter is they might need to do some business in January to plug these holes, and if not, there is a serious risk of a couple of injuries pulling their title race apart. Then we come to the final title contender, and it's one that I wasn't quite expecting this season, and it's Tottenham Hotspur, who have plenty of strength in their side in spite of selling Harry Kane, and that includes their new attacking identity. Where previously any goals would have to come from Heung-min Son or Harry Kane, things have massively changed now. You've got goals from Maddison, from Son, occasionally Richarlison, Dejan Kulusevski, even from slightly behind. I think Pape Matar is doing really well as well. And having that new attacking identity means there's a little bit more free-flowing football, a little bit more creativity. They're more fun to watch as is, especially since under Conte. He's managed to effectively translate the club from being 5 at the back to 4 at the back without causing too many problems. Furthermore, there isn't especially a reliance on one position. As I mentioned, there's good levels of attacking input coming from different places, but there's decent levels of defensive football as well. You can easily see Heung-min Son and Kulusevski dropping into sort of wing-back-esque positions to help with the defence more often. There's more of a fluidity and consistency to the side that has been massively missing, and it's brought a newfound confidence under Ange Postecoglou. Postecoglou has been a serial winner everywhere he's gone, although that is Japan and Scotland. Everywhere he's gone, his sides have won trophies, and he's managed to instill some of that confidence and some of that winning feeling into Tottenham Hotspur, which, of all clubs in the world, is a side that you wouldn't expect to be able to instill that in. It's just whether that can stay throughout the entire season, because there are definitely some weaknesses in this side. First of all, being that there's no real reliable number 9. Number 9 options at the moment are Richarlison effectively playing out of position, Brennan Johnson effectively playing out of position, or Heung-min Son effectively playing out of position, and all of these are arguably not good enough over the length of an entire season. Maybe Heung-min Son, but he's better off the left. That means you're stuck with Richarlison, who is missing sitters like he did this weekend against Luton. And when it comes to a title fight, you can't do with those mistakes. Furthermore, there's been a big overperformance all across the pitch. In terms of attack, they are outperforming their XG. In terms of defence, they're outperforming their XG against. If this eventually comes to balance, Spurs are going to drop more points, so they need to address these performances or just hope that the players that are in really good form stay in ridiculously good form and can get the club across the line. They will also suffer from the African Cup of Nations and Asia Cup issue, by the way, with the potential loss of Heung-min Son, as I've mentioned. Pape Matar, I think, is an African Cup of Nations player. There are lots of players throughout the squad that could potentially leave over the winter, and that is going to be a real risk for the side. Ultimately, who do I think will win the Premier League? I think it will be a lot tighter than it has been in recent years, purely because Man City show a little bit of a sign of slippage. It looks like they're not being as consistent as they have been before. Haaland hasn't quite been at the peak of last season, although that isn't ridiculous peak to ask for someone to do 2 seasons in a row. Weirdly, I want to say that I think one of the North London clubs will grab it. I really want to say Postecoglou because he plays a very exciting, interesting brand of football, although I don't think they've got the consistency for that. I think it's currently blown wide open. If there's a favourite, I'd say it's Manchester City. If there's a personal favourite, I'd say it's Tottenham. And if there's someone that I think deserves it based on the last 2 seasons, maybe Arsenal. Although I admit that's a complete non-answer. So I will say Liverpool. Why not? In fact, Brighton. I quite like Brighton. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments below. I always massively appreciate the little bit of conversation we can get going down there, getting all of your opinions. Subscribe if you're not yet, it's hugely appreciated, and like the video. I will see you later.